He was a powerhouse in the ring, a man fans knew for his strength, resilience, and the way he always got back up, no matter how hard he was hit. But nothing in his wrestling career could prepare him for the betrayal waiting for him outside the spotlight. Just 3 days after signing the final papers ending his marriage, he was found lying near a quiet roadside, struggling to breathe, his body bleeding from gunshot wounds. When detectives arrived, they quickly realized this wasn't a robbery, it wasn't random, and it wasn't a mistake. According to police, the people behind his death were the 2 individuals he once trusted, his ex-wife and the new man in her life. This case stunned everyone who knew him. Friends said he was trying to rebuild his life, trying to focus on his future, and trying to leave the past behind. But as investigators looked deeper, they discovered a hidden world of anger, jealousy, and secret relationships that had been boiling long before the divorce was finalized. The timing was too precise, the actions too calculated, and the clues, left behind in phone records, messages, and witness statements, began pointing in a direction nobody wanted to believe. What really happened in those 72 hours after the divorce? Why would the 2 people closest to him turn into suspects? And was this a crime of passion, revenge, or something even darker? Tonight, we break down the truth behind the tragic death of a former wrestler who survived countless battles in the ring, but couldn't escape the one waiting at home. From the beginning, he wasn't just another wrestler chasing fame. He was a kid who grew up believing that strength wasn't something you inherited. It was something you built. Friends from his childhood remember him as the quiet one, the kid who spoke little but observed everything around him. While other kids were busy arguing about superheroes, he was busy becoming one in real life. He spent hours training, pushing his limits, learning discipline, and dreaming of being on the big stage one day. His passion for wrestling didn't arrive suddenly. It came from years of watching legends on television, studying their moves, and imagining himself walking down the ramp with thousands cheering his name. When he finally stepped into the wrestling world, he quickly earned a reputation for his intensity. He wasn't the biggest wrestler in the room, but he fought like he was. Every match, every fall, every moment in the ring was proof that he had earned his place, not through shortcuts, but through pure determination. Outside the ring, though, his life was far quieter. He valued family more than anything. To him, the real victories happened at home. Small moments, quiet evenings, and building a future with the people he loved. When he fell in love and eventually married, he believed he had finally balanced both worlds. He was building a career, starting a family, and planning a future that looked solid and stable. But life has a way of shifting the ground beneath even the strongest feet. As the demands of training and travel increased, the pressure at home slowly grew. Arguments became more frequent, misunderstandings deeper, and the emotional distance wider. He tried to fix things. Friends say he was the kind of man who didn't give up easily. But some battles can't be fought alone. The differences between him and his wife became more complicated, and the marriage that once felt unbreakable began to crack. Still, to the outside world, he kept a brave face. In interviews, he talked about discipline, goals, and taking life one day at a time. No one saw the toll it was taking on him privately. He was a public fighter, but a silent one when it came to his personal struggles. He believed that no matter how hard things became at home, they could still find a way through. But sometimes, even the strongest hearts can't stop a relationship from falling apart. By the time the divorce process began, he had already been worn down emotionally. Yet he remained hopeful. He thought that ending the marriage peacefully would give both of them the chance to move on and rebuild. He focused on work, on healing, and on finding balance again. He didn't know that his greatest danger wasn't in the ring. It was much closer, waiting silently, forming in the shadows of his broken marriage. From the outside, their marriage looked ordinary. 2 people trying to build a life, balancing bills, responsibilities, work pressure, and personal dreams. But behind closed doors, small cracks were beginning to show. At first, the arguments were harmless, the kind every couple experiences. Disagreements about schedules, misunderstandings, moments of frustration that passed quickly. But over time, those small arguments grew heavier. Words carried more weight, silence lasted longer, and the distance between them became almost impossible to ignore. He was trying to keep up with the demands of his wrestling career, a job that required long hours, physical exhaustion, and travel that often kept him away from home. She, on the other hand, began to feel neglected, emotionally disconnected. Their communication weakened, and instead of resolving issues, each argument added another layer of bitterness to their relationship. The love that once felt strong and certain became tangled in resentment and unspoken disappointment. Money was another pressure. Wrestling wasn't always glamorous behind the scenes. Injuries, inconsistent bookings, and the stress of staying competitive took a toll. Bills piled up, responsibilities increased, and financial concerns stirred tension in ways neither of them expected. He tried to carry the weight quietly, hoping she wouldn't stress, but silence only deepened the distance between them. Slowly, their home turned into a battlefield of cold stares and unspoken questions. Nights that once ended with laughter now ended with each sleeping on opposite sides of emotional walls. He felt the pressure. He wanted stability, peace, a chance to rebuild the connection they once shared. But she seemed to be slipping away, drifting toward her own world, her own thoughts, her own unmet expectations. As time passed, friends noticed the change. He wasn't talking about his marriage anymore. He avoided the subject altogether, as if discussing it would make the situation even more real. She, meanwhile, seemed more withdrawn, spending more time outside the home, catching late-night calls, and growing increasingly protective of her privacy. Something had shifted between them, something neither was willing or able to fix. The breaking point arrived quietly, not with a dramatic fight or a major incident, but with exhaustion. They both reached a place where trying felt heavier than leaving. Papers were filed, and the long process of divorce began, filled with tension, legal discussions, and emotional strain. He believed that separating would bring peace, that the end of their marriage would give both of them breathing room to heal and move forward. But he had no idea how complicated things had become. Behind the scenes, a new relationship had already started forming in her life, a relationship that would later become the center of a crime police would call carefully planned. While he focused on rebuilding himself, she drifted further into this new connection, creating a web of secrets and alliances that would end up dragging them all into tragedy. By the time the divorce was finalized, he felt relieved, ready to start fresh. But what he didn't know was that his freedom had come with a countdown, one that was already ticking toward those final 3 days. The divorce papers had just been signed. 72 hours of freedom, a clean break, a new beginning, or so he thought. But those 3 days became a countdown that no one could have predicted. What started as relief quickly turned into unease. Friends and family noticed subtle changes. He was quieter than usual, a little more cautious, checking his surroundings, answering phone calls with tension in his voice. There was a sense that someone, or something, was watching him, waiting for the right moment. In those days, he tried to focus on himself. He wanted to return to his routines, training, and work, hoping to find some normalcy. But the past wasn't done with him. The person he had once shared his life with had moved on, and that new relationship brought a tension he couldn't ignore. Police later revealed that texts, phone calls, and interactions during this short window painted a picture of conflict and planning. Whether it was revenge, jealousy, or a mix of both, the pieces of the puzzle were already falling into place. On the morning of the attack, he followed his usual route, unaware that danger had been waiting for him along the path he had walked countless times before. Witnesses reported seeing him leave the house, making calls and texting friends, seemingly calm, but with an underlying sense of caution. Hours later, neighbors and passers-by would notice something alarming. A man lying injured on the side of a quiet road, bleeding and struggling to survive. By the time police arrived, he was barely conscious, and paramedics fought to keep him alive. Detectives quickly began piecing together the timeline. Just 3 days after the divorce, he had been in contact with both his ex-wife and her new partner multiple times. Surveillance footage and witness statements later indicated that the confrontation was premeditated, executed with a level of precision that shocked investigators. It wasn't a random act of violence. It was a plan executed with cruel efficiency, exploiting the timing of the divorce and the gaps in his daily routines. Family and friends were left in disbelief. How could someone move from ending a marriage to committing such a violent act in just 3 days? The rapid escalation was terrifying, leaving everyone questioning how well they truly knew the people closest to them. And for the wrestling community, it was a chilling reminder that life outside the ring could be far more dangerous than anything inside it. By the time the news broke publicly, social media exploded. Fans mourned, speculated, and shared their shock. But beneath the headlines, investigators were already following leads, collecting evidence, and tracing every detail of those critical 3 days. Each call, each movement, each interaction was examined, forming a timeline that would later be crucial in the arrests. The final hours of his life, those 72 days that were supposed to mark a fresh start, instead became the last, tragic chapter of a story that no one saw coming. From the moment he was found, investigators knew this case was far from ordinary. There were no signs of a struggle with strangers, no robbery attempt, and no random act of violence. The precision, the timing, and the circumstances immediately pointed to someone who knew him, and someone who had planned this attack carefully. Police quickly shifted their focus toward the people closest to him, his ex-wife and her new partner, both of whom had direct access to information about his routines, locations, and habits. Detectives began reconstructing his final movements. Every phone call, text message, and social media interaction in those 3 days was scrutinized. They discovered a pattern. Certain messages, unanswered calls, and meetings that seemed innocent at first glance now appeared as pieces of a carefully orchestrated plan. Witnesses reported seeing suspicious activity around his neighborhood, unknown vehicles following him, and conversations that raised alarm bells. All of these small details would later become crucial evidence. Forensic teams worked tirelessly to analyze the scene. Bullet casings, trajectory, and angles were studied to understand exactly how the attack unfolded. They mapped his movements, the route he took that morning, and the locations where he had interacted with both his ex-wife and her new partner. Investigators pieced together timelines, cross-referencing witness statements with phone data and security camera footage. Every tiny detail helped build a story of premeditation, a deadly plan that had been set into motion long before anyone realized it. Interviews with friends and family revealed warning signs that had been overlooked. Conversations hinted at tension, resentment, and unresolved conflicts between him and his ex-wife. Some friends recalled her making angry comments about the divorce, while others noticed her new partner showing an unusual interest in his daily routine. These insights, combined with technical evidence, allowed detectives to form a clear picture of motive and intent, linking the suspects to the crime with mounting certainty. As arrests became imminent, police coordinated with multiple departments, ensuring the suspects could be apprehended safely. The ex-wife and her new partner were eventually taken into custody, facing first-degree murder charges and weapons-related offenses. Authorities emphasized the importance of the evidence. Nothing had been left to chance, and the combination of forensic analysis, digital records, and eyewitness accounts left investigators confident in their case. The community, still reeling from the shock, watched as the investigation unfolded. Fans of the wrestler mourned not just the loss of an athlete, but the betrayal behind the attack. Every revelation highlighted the chilling reality. This was not an impulsive crime of passion, but a calculated act targeting someone the suspects knew intimately. Police continued to review every detail, ensuring that nothing was overlooked and that justice would follow the truth revealed by their meticulous work. In the end, the investigation painted a haunting picture of planning, deception, and a lethal betrayal, one that would become the defining chapter of a story that started in the wrestling ring but ended far too soon on a quiet street. The arrests sent shockwaves through the wrestling community and beyond. Police had taken both the ex-wife and her new partner into custody, charging them with first-degree murder and weapons violations. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, witness testimonies, and surveillance footage all pointed toward premeditation. Investigators described the attack as a carefully planned act, executed with a chilling precision that left little doubt about who was responsible. For friends and family, the reality was impossible to ignore. The betrayal had come from the people he once trusted the most. Motives, while officially under investigation, became the focus of intense speculation. Police suggested jealousy and resentment played key roles. The rapid progression from divorce to deadly confrontation indicated strong emotions, but investigators also noted the calculated nature of the act. This was not a spur-of-the-moment crime. Every step appeared deliberate. Family members revealed that tensions had been escalating quietly, and the new relationship in her life may have further fueled the animosity. Social media posts, messages, and private conversations were now examined for clues, painting a picture of conflict that had quietly grown until it reached a deadly climax. The community responded with disbelief. Fans, friends, and colleagues mourned his untimely death, remembering him as a fierce competitor in the ring, but a gentle, dedicated man in his personal life. Many expressed frustration that someone who had survived so many physical battles in wrestling could fall victim to an attack so close to home. The story highlighted a brutal truth. Sometimes the most dangerous threats come not from strangers, but from those we let closest to our lives. As the court process began, both suspects faced intense scrutiny. Prosecutors built their case carefully, relying on forensic evidence and documented interactions. Investigators emphasized that the timeline and method of the attack demonstrated planning and intent, strengthening the charges against the accused. Legal analysts noted that the evidence from those critical 72 hours after the divorce would be central to proving premeditation. Every text, call, and movement became part of a timeline that would guide the courtroom proceedings. The aftermath left friends and family grappling with questions about trust, betrayal, and justice. Could such a tragedy have been prevented? Were warning signs missed? As the legal process unfolds, authorities continue to stress the importance of patience, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. The case is a grim reminder that even in a world of fame, athleticism, and public admiration, private conflicts can escalate into unimaginable tragedy. In the end, the arrests closed one chapter but opened another: the search for justice, closure, and understanding. The story of a former wrestler whose life ended just days after a divorce is now a stark, cautionary tale, a reminder that human emotions, when mixed with betrayal, resentment, and secrecy, can be as dangerous as any opponent in the ring. As the trial continues, the world watches, hoping that the truth will prevail and that justice, though delayed, will ultimately be served.